Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and you know what we should do today? Let's drink some bacteria for our gut health. I know that sounds kind of stupid, but I promise there's a lot of science and a lot of actually intelligent stuff that we'll be talking about today, which is why we've invented, which is you invented this, but this is why we've invited Jake Troja, the owner of Kismet Brewery. And it's in Grimes, right?
In Grimes, absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So I have a can of something, and is it fair to say that this is basically a can of, amongst other things, bacteria?
Yes, we love bacteria. It's robust bacteria.
So if I drink this, am I going to die?
No, you're not going to die.
Right,
it's the good bacteria.
Let's do this here.
All right, let's crack it open. And we like to fill them, so watch out.
Yes, you do. I get a little. I'll just suck this off my sweater. Okay. And it's on my pants now too. I haven't had this one yet. Okay, so full disclosure here, I had some of this a couple days ago.
Yes, please.
Not this one. I had pear chai kombucha.
Okay. You probably won't find this one. It was the end of the winter season. Into the first of the year, we moved to pear chai.
This is also very good. Okay, so enough of that. I am actually going to
We'll get into that later.
I'm going to see if I can drink this during the entire show and not belch into the mic a lot.
Good luck.
Thank you. So for those that aren't familiar, we're going to dig into this whole topic. There's a lot of detail here, but for those that aren't familiar, what is kombucha? Just 30 seconds, and then we'll dig into most of the details later.
No worries. Kombucha is a fermented beverage made from tea, sugar, and culture, and that is it. It can be flavored with herbs and spices, juices, and things like that, but at its root, tea, sugar, water, culture. That's it.
And so the overall reason I got connected to this is gut health.
Yeah.
And so we will probably talk about, can we talk about that now?
Sure, let's go for it.
Let's just talk about gut health. So it has a lot of natural probiotics and it promotes gut health. Can you discuss that a little bit? And
for sure.
There's a backstory to why you got into this. There's so much to go into, but let's just talk about kombucha and gut health first.
Yeah, I mean, your gut and your flora in your gut is all bacteria. Healthy bacteria is what kind of balances the body. So when you have kombucha that has a naturally organic bacteria in it, it helps the good bacteria in your gut flourish. So what's different about kombucha than most beverages that are brewed is it's natural. This is all organically made, collected from the environment. We're not adding yeast or bacteria to this. It's living together in its own symbiotic relationship. So it's all real. And so it's what your body already has in it. It's just levitating or elevating that bacteria to a positive way in your gut.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of problems. There's a gut health problem.
Absolutely.
And I'm not a medical person, but I do know gut health, for at least Americans, is getting progressively worse. And I'm sure that someone else has a much better probably like Andrew Huberman probably has a podcast on why that's happening. But natural probiotics replace some of that bacteria we need, isn't that?
It can supplement, and it can even help your gut get into a healthy place. I think what's important about when we think about kombucha compared to, let's say, a soft drink, our kombucha that we make, and we can dive into that, it's real ingredients. There's nothing fake in here. There's no fake probiotics. You can get probiotics that are made in a lab. These are made in the environment, in the world, and you're putting it in your body that your body wants, and it helps the gut be in a positive way, digest food better, better immune system.
No, I have heard. I don't remember what expert it was. I'm very careful where I get my medical advice. You have to be careful.
Absolutely.
But I remember someone discussing that synthetic probiotics really, and I don't remember what context this was or what the value was or the benefit, but they were basically saying, be careful of the synthetic probiotics. You want the natural ones. You want the naturally occurring ones. The synthetic ones don't really have the same effect.
I'm not an expert either.
Yeah, I'm not.
I've only heard a little bit about that and kind of just went down the path of let's do the real stuff. we know the real stuff is what has kept our bodies around for a long time, and this beverage, for thousands of years. So we haven't even pursued the idea or the science behind the lab created probiotics. So I couldn't comment too well on that.
Sure. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to have you in here, outside of the fact that we had some and it was really good, I'm a kombucha fan.
Absolutely.
And I saw your label at Daisy Chain in Des Moines several times. And I've seen so many kombucha labels, and I just kind of start to ignore them after a while. But then I read the label, and the one I was looking at, which you have on the table here,
pear chai.
Yeah, pear chai, had really, really low sugar. This one has low sugar too. I think both of them say under a gram,
right? Which
is crazy because a lot of kombuchas have actually quite a bit of sugar in them.
Quite a bit of sugar, and it can come from a couple different sources. Where our sugar ultimately coming in this is what's left over from fermentation. Mm-hmm. So sugar has to be fermented, and we can get into the science of that in a minute. And then the juice puree or juice that's in here is where that sugar is coming from. That's it.
Oh, so that's not even added?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's no added sugar in this one.
We're not adding sugar in there, and
my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So what you'll see in this one, on this one here, the cranberry, we're flavoring it at the end of the fermentation process with apple. So we actually got apple cider from Iowa Orchard, right? And,
they've been on the show before. Yeah.
We put cool. In our batch we put 15 gallons of apple cider in there.
That's
less than 3% of the brew, but it gives a nice apple flavor.
It really does. Yeah.
So that's kind of what pops when you do it in a real way with real ingredients. That a small amount of flavor just pops very well.
So there is this the reason I wanted to have you in here is because there is a very noticeable decrease in the United States in alcohol consumption. Mm-hmm. And that would be from Gen Zers are not drinking a lot of alcohol. I think I was remembering that maybe baby boomers are actually drinking a little bit more, but Gen Z is kind of like they don't want to because financial, health reasons. And what was the other one? I think I wrote this down. I was looking. I don't know if I have that down, but they're not really drinking as much. And there's a general decline of alcohol sales. So specifically people in their 30s and below. So beer's down 13%, cocktails are down 9%, and that's all since 2021. Mm. So is that contributing to the rise in popularity of drinks like kombucha?
I think so. I mean, functional beverages is kind of the category that they put that in.
Functional beverages.
Yeah, functional beverages, and that can include many things from kombucha to your probiotic beverages to your beverages that have apple cider vinegar in it and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, like when you say functional beverages, are you making like kind of a collision between like functional medicine and beverages?
I don't know. I mean, that's what they call that category of like beverages that have things in it for a purpose. Mm-hmm. Whether that be a probiotic. Sometimes there's other options in there, but I'm trying to think like roots, organic herbs, or sometimes in those beverages. They call those functional beverages.
Sure.
But that also includes things like, I just about burped, so that's going to happen. Like Prime or whatever. There's some beverages out there that are meant, or I guess intended to give you a better, like Gatorade and those things as well, I think might fall in that category of functional.
Oh, that's too bad.
So it's kind of a wide swath.
That's too bad you're included into Gatorade.
But that's kind of what they call functional beverages. And then in the health market area, the functional beverages are really narrowed down to things that are cold beverages, or sometimes they're shelf stable. But shelf stable, you lose a lot of probiotic, positive bacteria into that. So that's what they call functional beverages anyways. That's a deep category. But to your point, I think folks are looking at what's on the market and trying to make healthy choices.
Yeah.
And when you look at kombucha, at first you're like, what is that? It's weird. Our journey to get to there is a long way, but we've been drinking kombucha for about 10 years. And really started brewing it about, at this point, 4 or 5 years ago, but got there through health reasons. We're like, we wanted to pursue better health, not drink alcohol, as you just mentioned, and get into something that was better for you. And that is something that came across our research at that time. We're like, what is that? Let's try it. And I think I bought the trilogy, GT's trilogy, I think was the first one that I ever drank. And I at first thought this was terrible.
Not all of it's created equal.
Why would you drink this? But it grows on you in that way. So that's how we kind of got into it, to answer your question.
Yeah, for me, it was a health
Absolutely.
thing to start out. But for me, like I like a good cocktail.
Absolutely.
I like a good beer. Beer makes me feel terrible. I realized later it was certain kind of beers, like non-organic grains, make me feel terrible. That's a whole thing. We'll
That's
get
a whole
into
nother,
later.
yeah.
But for me, it's the reason I like alcohol, like cocktails or beer, is not because of the buzz. I do not like that. I hate that part. So if I drink a little too much and I get a little buzzed or I don't feel good the next day, I hate that so much. The reason I drink it is because I like unique flavors. My wife will say, "You like beverages," and it's all beverages. I like
Absolutely.
I like juices, orange juices. I love water. I don't really actually like soda. I kind of hate all soda, but I like smoothies. Anything liquid I like, including various alcohols, because I like different I like a different palette of flavor.
For sure. We're the same person there.
Yeah, and so
for sure.
kombucha really, like I was telling you before we went on the show, I'm not an investor or anything or anything like that, but your pear chai has a lot of really subtle flavor. And I told you before we were recording, it's like fancy. It's like fancy. I feel like it's I got a $40 bottle imported from Italy or something.
For sure.
It's super good. So there's this huge rise in like not just people cutting alcohol, but also zero-proof beverages. And so like zero-proof cocktails.
Absolutely.
And for a while, most of these zero-proof cocktails I was seeing on menus were just kind of cheap, crappy replacements. These days, there are some restaurants that I go to that the zero proof are far superior to their alcoholic counterparts because they're making unique cocktails now. It's just not a replacement. So is kombucha, like, is this kind of a trend now? Because I'm seeing this on menus where
I hope
there are
so.
kombucha cocktails and people, is this a thing?
For sure. It's totally a thing. Kombucha cocktails is totally a thing. We have many partners, specifically in the Des Moines area, but that use this as complementing on their in a menu. What can we offer that would give a complex flavor, as you just said, that is crafted? You can tell somebody made this because the way the complexity of the flavors, the way that it is, hitting my mouth. Somebody's paying attention to the carb level in here. We measure the carb amount of CO2 that's in the beverage. Like, it's very specific of the flavor we're going for. And that one of our biggest partners in town are the local breweries that are here. They like to offer this as a complement to their craft beverage. And that, to me, that speaks volumes to our craftsmanship on the beverage, but also to your point, folks want something else at times. Beverage snobs like you and I, we like to taste something unique and have something that's quality. And the soda isn't doing it. So, who's making stuff? Let's drink that. And I'm with you for sure.
Yeah, and so it is interesting because you do say, well, I mean, you basically run a brewery.
We run a brewery.
Right?
It looks just like you're brewing beer, generally speaking. We have, a kettle. We heat up water. We put stuff in it. That gets to a boil. You filter out whatever you're boiling in there. For us, it's tea. And sometimes it's herbs and spices to kind of add to that brew. Bring that out of there, add sugar. Let it ferment, and that kind of gets into the science, which we can jump into if you want to, but the science of it gets a little bit tricky and also super confusing if you're looking at Google and trying to figure out, how would I do this at home safely? We can dive into that, but it's just like a brewery. And at the end of it, you cold crash it, you purge it, you force carbonate, you put it in a bottle or a can, and you serve it just like it's beer.
And you mentioned, like, why, when I think of making steak and potatoes or making something at home, I think of obvious food safety things like don't temper the meat too long, make sure it's in the freezer, basic stuff like that, cross-contamination,
100%,
making sure things are heated to the right temperature. So what would be the safety concerns in like making kombucha? What are the things you look for?
Well, at home, you're really looking for your pH value to be low. Like, you got to have it be acidic enough.
What is that for?
So I'm also not a scientist, but also a researcher. So I know pH measures the hydrogen amount, and it really puts it across an acidic scale or an alkaline scale, right? So we're looking at seeing how much. For us, we use it in the purpose of how acidic is our beverage. And if it's below a certain point on that pH scale, we know that bad bacteria is not going to grow into that beverage, and allows it to be safe. And kombucha is really nice. It takes care of itself. So if that pH is below the danger point, which is really 4.2, we use 4.0 for those sciences out there. If as long as it's below 4.0, oh, we are not concerned that bad bacteria is going to grow in there, and we still have to be, clean and sanitize everything. We don't want to introduce anything in there like that's bad. But there's that point is one checkpoint, and temperature is a huge point for us. We measure temperature. We got to bring our teas up to above that sanitation point so that when we do transfer that tea, it's hot enough that it provides everything to be sanitized. We cold crash that. We keep it all airtight. All that to maintain a really high quality beverage. So at home, you're really looking at, do I have an acidic brew? Can I keep it acidic enough that nothing bad's going to grow in there? And do I keep my utensils clean? That's really what the most important thing is at home.
Yeah, okay, because that's what I know that my only experience with kombucha from like a homemade standpoint is my brother.
Okay.
Was like trying to make some at home. I don't know if I ever had any.
It's kind of hard. Yeah, it's kind of hard
because you have to baby it a lot, and
you have to pay attention. You have to be clean. But it's not. I think if you don't mind, I'll jump into it a little bit. It's not that hard. What's hard is getting information to tell you how to do it right. And so the information out there is really wrong. So I think
that's interesting. So be aware if you want to make it yourself. Be real careful.
Listen up. Here's how it works. Okay, you can go on to the store anywhere and just get an OG kombucha. Nothing, no sugar added, no flavors. Just get raw kombucha. It can be carbonated. Doesn't matter. Take that bottle, that can, put it in a jar and just let it sit for a week. Cover it up with a cloth and just let it sit. That over a week, 2 weeks at room temperature will be what we would call like a starter. It has fermented most of the sugar out of it. It's robust enough that you would use that to brew a new batch of kombucha. Almost like you're introducing that bacteria and you're going to multiply that bacteria in the next brew. Introduce tea, sugar, and there's ratios in here. But keep temperature is really important too, so you don't kill your bacteria and you don't introduce bad bacteria. And then from there, you're really just this cycle of starter, finish kombucha, starter, finish kombucha. And it's really like backslopping is the term they use when you use whatever's left over in that brew for the next brew.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they call it. But that's how it works. It's actually not too hard, but like SCOBY's an example of a word that people get confused. So they say SCOBY.
SCOBY, okay.
SCOBY,
yeah,
yes.
So walk us through what that means.
So SCOBY,
you were telling me earlier, this is a term that's often thrown around and misunderstood.
For sure. People will say SCOBY, and most of the time they're referencing a pellicle or a mat that actually forms naturally on top of kombucha. So if you have real kombucha at home, it's going to form a protective layer over the liquid. And that's the bacteria like doing its job. If you don't have a mat, you're not making kombucha. You're making something else, likely, I don't know. But the mat is natural. Okay. It's bacteria forming itself. And it's really interesting.
Do some people call that a mother?
They call that a mother, yes.
Yeah, okay.
They call that a pellicle. They call that a mat, and they mistakenly call it a SCOBY.
And it looks like, they call that a SCOBY.
They sometimes call that a SCOBY.
Is not a SCOBY.
If you buy a SCOBY off the internet, you're getting ripped off. Do not buy the pellicle, the mat off the internet. That won't help you any. You need the liquid. The SCOBY is the liquid. SCOBY stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. Symbiotic meaning they live together. So how it works, I'm going to dive in and go nerd here for a second.
Please.
So
I'll stop you if you go too nerd.
Yeah, the yeast is what, in like beer, yeast eats sugar and creates ethanol, alcohol, and CO2. That's the same thing in kombucha. It creates ethanol and CO2. So Jake, are you guys making alcohol in your brewery? Sometimes, not above 0.5% or we get in trouble, but sometimes it makes alcohol because that's a byproduct of yeast doing its job. What's great about kombucha and what makes it NA is that bacteria, it wants alcohol. It eats the alcohol or the ethanol and it makes the acetic acid or the acid part of kombucha. So that's the symbiotic part. You give me I know the bacteria says you give me, ethanol, and I'll make this protective acid that keeps us all safe. And that's how it works together. So when you brew at home, you measure your sugar, which they call bricks. You measure your bricks. You monitor when your sugar goes down to where you want it. Most people monitor it by drinking it. Like, this is less sweet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is this sweet enough?
It's kind of like a winery would do
for
that.
sure. Yeah. Does this fit my palate? This is what I want to do. And then when it's finished, when it has that acidic value to it, like the bacteria has eaten that ethanol. And it has created acetic acid or acids to help, lower that pH. And that's what the SCOBY is. It's the liquid. So I'm going to say it one more time. If you want to get started in home brewing, do not buy a pellicle, a SCOBY, a mother offline. That won't help you. Just buy the liquid. The liquid is what you need, and a ratio of somewhere between 10 and 20% when you start a new batch is the right way to do it.
And when my brother was starting on this, I didn't quite understand everything. So all I saw on the top of his kombucha was a chunk of slime.
Yeah,
and I was like, yeah, I don't know,
I'm
man.
not sure I want to do that.
I think I'm going to drink the canned stuff by professionals, but good luck.
Good luck. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. I mean, if you don't have a mat, you don't have a good brew.
Yeah.
You know, and your bacteria is not healthy, something's wrong. And so you'd want to take a look at that. So a lot of people like keep their mats and then use it to the next, or their pellicle and use it for the next brew. Unnecessary. You don't need to do that. A lot of people, are there things in their bacteria? Yes, there is, but it's really in the liquid. So as long as your liquid is mixed well, you don't need to keep them mat, and actually transferring it at least in our brewery, we don't keep them. We feel like transferring just opens up the idea to sharing something that might get like other bad bacteria. You might get it dirty, transferring it, things like. So we actually recycle those. And we give them away to people that want them, to put them in their garden, things like that. So, or we use them. Sometimes we put them leave them in there and use them to kind of start the next batch. But we don't backslop that pellicle into the next batch because we're afraid of contaminants, and it's unnecessary. It really isn't needed. So
our common friend Dan Bosman, down there at Daisy Chain, where I saw your stuff. He mentioned that there is some this is essentially like a pandemic project kind of a thing.
Yeah,
there's a backstory here
for sure.
And so when I was texting him for your contact information, that's one of the things he said is make sure to ask about the backstory. So how did the pandemic kind of basically push you to do this? Yeah,
absolutely. Well, our journey started, about 10 years ago. We kind of changed our food lifestyle. My wife and I, for various reasons, decided, you know what, let's try vegan. Let's try vegetarian. We really did vegan for a long number of years. And when you're in that time frame, raised in the Midwest on steak and potatoes, the vegan diet, it's hard. It's super really hard. So you're looking for some variety. Like, what else is out there? What what's tahini, and what's all this stuff that I should try to eat, right? So kombucha kind of came across our desk at that time. That's how we saw it. And so we started drinking it, started liking it, started to develop that profile and palate for it. And then the pandemic hit, and we're like, well, I said, I don't know, can you brew that at home? Is that something you can make? And so I started to look into how you would do that, and that's where I would say the information out there is really hard to tell what to do is correct.
Oh, because you went through that journey.
I went through that journey. Like, what's a SCOBY? What's a mat? What do I need to brew? How much sugar should I use? What kind of tea should I use? What's my water? Does it have to be filtered? What's the temperature? Like, how much? It's kind of like the new sour bread right now. I don't know if you're seeing like sour bread across the social medias, but everybody's trying sourdough, starters, and it's similar in that nature.
Oh, sure.
And everybody's frustrated and throwing away because the information out there is all over the place. Yeah, it's just not quite exactly correct. So similar with our home brewing, but we got into it. I had the time to monitor it. We're working from home. We're doing this brewing and found some success, but my wife wouldn't drink it. She's like, I'm not going to drink something that you made. I don't trust that.
Your wife, okay, so your wife and I are also kind of alike. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to drink that.
She's like, I'm not going to drink that. Great. You got to prove to me that it's safe. I'm like, seriously? I have to prove to you that it's safe? It worked. And she's like, the visual evidence is not enough.
You just didn't do royal taste testing for her? Wasn't good enough, right?
I drank it and I was fine. I survived.
She was not convinced.
No. And so I was like, fine. Let me look up where I can get this tested. Like, who can test? And so that's when I started figuring out, what are your controls? Temperature, pH value, trsatable acid is another control. TA is also a control. So I started figuring those out. And the first thing we did is I said, all right, I'll just take a sample up to Ames. They have a wine lab up there. Mm-hmm. They can test it for these things.
Hold up. They have a wine lab?
They have a wine lab, like a food wine lab at Ames.
Are they accepting volunteers?
Well, you may be. They run a lab, and I had a great contact up there. It's like $15. You can submit a sample, and they do all the things. Yeah, alcohol content.
I didn't know that. Yeah, is this for home? Did they set this up for home brewers and everything?
I think it's for wine breweries across Iowa.
Really?
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's crazy.
But if you go Iowa State Wine Lab, then they have a whole thing. They can do all of this stuff. It's crazy. But it's cheap. It's super cheap. But if you were to use like a private industry, and I won't name any, but you could just add a zero to the end of that price tag, and that's how much it would cost.
Add a zero to the end of cheap?
Yeah, end of cheap. Yeah, exactly. Cheapo. But no, it's like $150 to do like a pH test and alcohol ethanol test. But up there it's $15. So then I got it tested, showed my wife. I was like, look, see? And it's online. It's great. You can drink it. And so she drank it, and she's like, okay, it's pretty good. But, and she's a fan, but she's not it's not her everyday beverage. And so I was like, all right, cool. So we started naturally carbonating it just like you would old school beer, sugar, yeast, leave it in room temperature, and then it does its thing, right? And then my brother-in-law and sister-in-law moved back to town. They've been out of Des Moines area for 20 plus years. They've been around the world. They work in business and actually in the food industry as well. Decided to come back to Urbandale. And so they came back to that area, and my brother-in-law drank the stuff I had on the counter. And he's like, wow, this is really good. Like, and then the next question was what everybody says, like, well, you should sell it. I was like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, I'm pretty good. Just make it. And he's like, no, seriously, like, let's look into it. And so we started looking, kind of going down the path, like what has to be true for you to do a commercial brewery? And the first question we said, well, who's doing it? Like, who has something? And so we looked across the state, and there was a few places here and there, but nothing that, like, I would say is at scale, like wide scale distribution out of Iowa or even the Midwest. And so we're like, okay, well, maybe there is something for us to look at. So we went down that path, and it's just every question we have to figure out, is there a yes here? Like, is that something that's possible? And the regulation around kombucha and the support out there from the industry is really pretty small. Like, there isn't a lot of regulation around kombucha, which is good and bad. It's bad in terms of you as a consumer, you have to be really pay attention to what you're drinking, you know, make sure that what you're actually drinking is made in a traditional way, if that's what you're looking for. But there's other ways you can kind of shortchange your way to what's called kombucha. But it's such a wide name. So I can kind of dive into that, and that's like another level of detail. But we went down that path, and we got to the point where you kind of get to the point where you can't do anything unless you say, I need to set up a shop and get a license, and you have to put your stuff in there. You have to have somebody come watch you. They have to show them your SOPs and all your stuff. And
standard operating procedures.
Standard operating procedures, and show all your, your HACCP plans, how you're going to keep everything safe. And so we're like, okay, well, maybe we should try it. And so we did. We rented a facility in Grimes, set up a brewery, and invited the inspector out, and we passed. And we got to make kombucha, and we made stuff in a very small tank, about a 3-barrel tank, which is about 100 gallons. Put it in kegs and some cans, and like within a week, like it was all gone. We sold it. And I said to my brother, I was like, oh, crap. Like, we're going to have to make more. Like, that went a lot faster than I thought. And so, like, the appetite for a really high-quality craft beverage is there. And what I love about this Des Moines and central Iowa area, even Iowa in general, is that the craft brew scene is very well established. So folks know, they know what a good beverage is. And they're our biggest critics, but they're also been our biggest fans. So a local brewery here, can I name breweries? Is that
fair?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Lua Brewery, Scott and those guys, they were one of the first groups we went to say, hey, you should drink some kombucha. And their first reaction was, no. Yeah, thanks for coming. and that was true. And I said, no, I mean, like, we really made something that I think is good. You should try it. So they tried it, and Scott tried it, and the team tried it and gave us some feedback and said, this is pretty good. Yeah, we kind of like what you got going on here. Like, you're really paying attention to the details. And I was like, we're trying. Well, like, we're really trying to do it. And they've been one of our longest partners. Lua, they stock us there, and we sell a lot of boots for them. So we are trying to introduce a product that we believe is like super high quality, that stands next to that craft beverage that you like. And when you drink it, you go, oh, this thing is more than just fermented tea. Folks are paying attention to what's going on in here, and that's what we're trying to present.
So that is a really interesting point. Like, you were able to connect. I mean, they're very connected, obviously, but you were able to make the direct connection that this is it's a brewery.
Absolutely.
We're brewing things. It's just not beer, but it's a very similar process, and that's kind of where you got the acceptance from people, because beer is also fermented.
Exactly. Yeah, it's fermented, and what makes us
wine.
Wine, and makes us a little bit different is we're kind of closer to the wild ferment of beer, like those wild ferments where it kind of does its own thing, and then they monitor it. That's kind of what we're doing. Like, we set up some parameters. Like, here's where we kind of want to finish. So here's our starter. These are our range in terms of how much sugar we're hoping to end with, in terms of profile, how much acidity or trisatable acid we're trying to end up with. So we kind of have some parameters, but you really can't control it. It's going to do its own thing. And so when you start to control
so there's a little bit of variation from line to line.
From every can, from
which
run
is
to
the same
run.
with wine too.
For sure. Yeah. From every run, you're going to taste a little bit of different. Maybe you have a little bit more pop of a certain flavor per run because of the way, the bacteria interacts at that point in time, the trisatable acid level at that point in time. It's a little bit variable, which is kind of fun in terms of, like, it's a live thing, and we want to have it be live. We don't want to control it where it's not alive in its own thing. But we can create our product in a way that it's fairly consistent, I'd say, within a range of flavors. So when you drink this cranberry now, And then next year, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I remember this profile. It's going to be pretty close. But is it the same culture as it was a year ago? Nope.
If you had the opportunity to like save a can, I don't even know if you can save a can for a year. You can do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you had somehow the opportunity to compare last year's version with this year's version, and you were like is there a kombucha sommelier? Is that a thing yet?
I'm sure there is. We might have one on our team. Our brewer, Lexi, is a super taster. So she might be on her way to sommelier.
Someone like her, she could taste the difference.
Oh, for sure.
But generally, like maybe like my wife is a really, really good cook. Maybe she could tell the difference.
For sure.
But generally, people probably would have a tough time telling
They'd
the
have
difference.
a hard time telling run to run.
So is the inconsistency of it, which anything fermented, like you said, that's kind of how it works. Is that why I see, because I was looking at labels, as I always do, and I was seeing a variation on sugar. Like these ones are less than a gram natural sugar. Some have more.
Right.
Is that why? Or are you adding sugars in some of them that are more of a dessert kombucha?
For sure.
And like these ones on the table here are more of like the leaner kombucha, which by the way, I think even this has a great sweetness to it. And you don't even have any added sugar in it.
Yeah, it's less than 2% sugar. We're usually finishing about 1 and 1.5% sugar, so it's pretty dry.
And this one you mentioned, there's no added.
No added sugar. We don't add any sugar, at the end of our batch. You're adding a fruit juice or a puree for flavor.
Oh, wait a minute. So you don't add sugar for sweetener. It's just it's through the fruit juice or fruit.
Correct.
Oh, so there's zero added sugar outside of the juices.
That's correct.
Oh,
sometimes there's honey. Like I believe in this one we have honey. Sometimes we add a little bit of like agave, nectar or something like that, kind of bring out that flavor, but no added sugar. It's all through that fermentation process. Absolutely.
So real quick, as we wrap up here, how are you just within Iowa right now? How big's distribution?
Sure.
How much are you selling? What's the general outlook?
Yeah, I mean, we are currently distributed through Distributed.
It works.
Yeah, we're distributed.
We hit it somewhere in there.
Distributed. No. We're distributed through PDI, which is Hy-Vee, and that gets us to about 7 states and about 100. About 120 stores have us on the shelf.
120?
Yeah, 120. Almost.
My gosh.
Yeah, full time. And then with Fairway stores, we distribute through them as well. I would say right now we're looking at consistently 45 to 80 stores there, maybe a little bit more. And then our local partners here, we self-distribute to many. And then we also distribute through another organization called That Iowa Girl. They distribute us, and so does Farm Table. Some local places do that. So I would say on a monthly basis, number of cans going out the door, we're probably looking at 12 to 15,000 cans a month.
Geez, so this is not a tiny little operation anymore.
Yeah, comparative though, it is kind of tiny in some of these other places.
For some of the nationals, sure.
Yeah, but we're moving about 15,000 cans.
My word. Okay, Jake Troja, owner of Kismet Brewery in Grimes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Hy-Vee, Fairway. Can people go to the website and buy it too?
We don't sell it online, but get at the stores.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a heavy thing to ship. So
it is heavy, and it's got to be cold.
Yeah, well, that's also a good point. Yeah, it's also a great point. So Hy-Vee, Fairway, obviously Daisy Chain below me
Daisy Chain,
right now.
a lot of local places here. On our website, we have most of our stores listed we're in.
Okay,
yep, and we're looking for other distributors and partners, so we're always looking to go a little bit bigger. We have capacity right now to kind of double our brewing, so we're working with a few other distributors to try to get out beyond the Midwest or even further into the Midwest. So, yeah, we have the room to grow. We think we have a great product.
You do. You absolutely do.
Yeah, appreciate that, and I think we want to get it out there. So we appreciate it.
Jake Troja, owner of Kismet Brewery, thanks for coming on the Iowa podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa podcast.